Hello, everybody. I hope you are doing well. Happy Easter for those of you who celebrate the holiday, or even if you don't, technically celebrate it, you're still having a day with family, good food, safety, etc. I just wish all of you the best no matter what, however you approach this day. I'm taping this really early on Sunday morning, the 20th. And so a couple of things. Let me back it up a little bit. I'm a Fefe with Touch by Tarot and Beyond. For those of you who may not know me and you're just landing on the channel, I'm glad you're here. I hope you stick around, like what you see. I am a certified tarot reader, been doing it for decades, and I'm also a former newspaper journalist, so I try to get my facts straight, try to stay on top of what's really happening, try to stay objective, right? And then we go to spirit and we get a deeper understanding on whatever the topic of that reading of the day is, or readings of the day. So we get a little more context from spirit, and very often it's like, why? just help us understand why. So I really love doing this work. I'm glad to have you here with me. Let's see. Today, interesting, 4:20, I woke up. Many of you have been emailing me or putting things in the comments about today, specifically related to the potential implementation of martial law, right? And putting the military out. That was also a concern I think a lot of people had, because as many of you know, the 5051 group and other grassroots organizations, there were marches again yesterday, protests, as there were on April 5th, which, like, wow, right? We see the numbers in very unexpected places, even people turning out. And so yesterday, from what we saw on social media, the same thing. People are turning out, and so in response to that, there's been, we have to do this. We recognize why we are doing this, because it's essential right now, and we need that. We need that momentum. But is there a risk, or is there a growing risk? So we're going to go and we're going to look at going forward, if in fact that is. Some people have been calling. I've been calling him FDT, right? Fake felon, whatever, DT. But I got some comments, and you all, I love the interaction. I love reading the comments, because I kept seeing 8647, and I was like, 8647, 8647. It finally clicked. So I may use that a little bit. I appreciate that from you all. That's clever. So gonna look at, are we headed towards that, or is he looking for any excuse to do that, to push back harder and have a military presence, and do that. But secondly, you all, I want to look, talk about, for those of you who may be Christian and this is a religious holiday for you, and the whole "he is risen" thing. How about Kamala Harris? We understand that she has decided to speak with Ken Martin on May 6th in New York for a big DNC to-do fundraiser. Tickets start at something like 25 grand and then progressively go up from there, So I won't be there. I don't know about many of you, but the point is, after some months of many people wondering, what is Kamala doing? What are her plans? Is she going to make another run in 2028? Is there going to be something that comes out about the election that would actually, handle the situation and get her in office? I personally, as a reader, have not seen that, and I've been a little reticent about sharing that with you all, because people's emotions get really heightened around that, and I understand. But I have felt for some time that whatever the reasons are, that the release of fraudulent voting machines, tabulations, etc., whatever and there are many reasons why they have not proceeded with that, Biden, etc. But I've gotten the sense increasingly, I'd say since around February, that Kamala Harris is leaning very, and I'm going to go to spirit, shut my yap, but she's leaning towards running for governor, more so than relaunching a campaign for president. However, this decision to come back in a more forceful presence on behalf of the Democratic National Party as a body, That says something. So let's look at those two things, all right? Let's get the more, let's get the first one out of the way. Abound Spirit, is there a concerted effort on behalf of 8647's administration to implement martial law? Are they looking for any excuse? Have there been talks about that? Are there plans in the work to implement martial law to quell protests in the United States? Are they going to implement martial law to quell protests in the United States? Thank you, Spirit. All right, let's see. We have the Ace of Cups at the bottom of the deck. After I shuffle, I always pay attention to what lands at the bottom of the deck. Interesting that this comes in cups. There's resentment toward, they want to quash the feel-goods. They want to quash, and there's resentment towards the fact that these protests are giving people hope and giving people a sense of community and camaraderie and collectivity and strength and power and owning our power. So I think that's what the Ace of Cups is about. A lot of resentment toward that and recognizing that it's growing. With the Two of Pentacles, growing, moving forward. Notice that labyrinth. They sense the power, not only in numbers, but in the scope of the protests, the ideas, and knowing that and witnessing that they are taking place in many places, Utah, except like Kentucky, Wyoming, like places that they feel are their stronghold, and perhaps they are, but there's this trying to figure out, how do we staunch or quell this feel-good momentum that they are experiencing, perhaps short of force. And there's the Star. I'm going to tell you all, I'm getting from Spirit that, not that they don't want to do it, they'd be perfectly fine with unleashing force against the American people for entertainment purposes only. Gotta do it. But there's also, there's some concern of the extent to which their orders would be carried out. That's what I'm getting, you all. Not that they wouldn't. There is that contingent of, of forces that would absolutely obey his commands. But there's also a large swath of folk who would not want to do that and go against the American people. And I just got confirmation with the Knight of Cups. Cups again. This is about respecting people's feelings on behalf of the people who would have to carry it out, not 8647 and his administration. They could care less. But the people who would actually have to carry this out at the federal and local and state levels, there would be some resistance. There would be some sentiment around, this is really now gone too far. This is not right. We should not be harming and locking up and hurting Americans for just exercising their First Amendment rights. And there's the Eight of Swords confirming. Thank you, Spirit. Yeah, there would be deep concern. So I think, in so many words, what Spirit is showing us, you all, in these cards is the desire to do it is certainly there. The Chariot, trying to move past it, but also there's concern whether it would even be effective. In other words, would people be resourceful enough to still find another way? Maybe the protests would then go back virtual. That's what I'm getting. Like, remember during the campaign when Kamala Harris was running, and remember the tens of thousands of people who were showing up night after night, different groups were hosting, like that sort of presence. It's almost like they recognize there's a quality between the star ruled by Aquarius, one for all for one, revolution, Uranus, revolutionary energy, and the Chariot. There's almost a recognition, I think, at least by some in his administration who have his ear, that this is not a matter of simply enacting martial law and then bada bing, bada bang, it's done. I think they recognize that people would still find somehow, some way to continue to do it. And we have the priestess confirming that. Priestess is sometimes what is done in secret or what is done behind the scenes. And this also, there's a double-edged sword here with that. That would be both on behalf of the people, the will of the people, to continue to find a way. Where's my Chariot? To continue to find a way to coalesce, to express displeasure, to express the this will not happen. We will keep our country, etc. So there's that. But there is also them behind the scenes trying to figure out, well, then what can we do? Because we're not going to just sit back and take this. And there's the King of Swords, which he's a Gemini. Sometimes I see him as the Emperor, sometimes King of Swords. So that's him. Spirit, what is he going to do? Will he sit pat for now? Will he Page of Swords, waffling back and forth on, yes, I'm going to make this I'm going to do something about this, and on the other hand, but not yet, waffling. And then the Six of Swords. So this is something I just heard. Expect more as we get closer to either the summer, the fall, and certainly whenever we get into elections. There's something around that. There's some sort of marshaling is the word they're giving me. There's some sort of marshaling of energy or forces around tempering what happens at the polls and exercising a military presence or some sort of forceful presence at the polls and at campaign events, campaign rallies, and using that to potentially, Page of Pentacles, yep, that's a plan, using that as perhaps to gather damaging evidence or energy around candidates, specifically Democratic candidates or independent candidates, using campaign events. So in a more political context versus a more social context that we're seeing now in the grassroots movements. I hope that makes sense. So yes, the bottom line, Spirit is saying, yes, it's still on the table, but they recognize in this present moment, there is no, there's even no pretend justification. There's been no violence. There's been no fires, no rioting. There's been, there's just no pretext to be able to actually enact that. So that's why it hasn't happened up until this point, but it is not off the table. And I think as we get, what we saw is what Spirit is saying is, as we get closer towards the launching of campaigns for 2026 and campaign events, that's where it's gonna get a little sticky. But we'll go back, we'll revisit that as we get closer to that time. All right, you all. Let's look at Kamala Harris, right? The Lotus returns. She is risen, right? So let's get a little more context. Spirit, is Kamala Harris considering a run for president in 2028? Is that still on the table for her? Please help us understand a little more around why she's showing up, why she's going to New York on May 6th. For this fundraiser. Is this her reemergence? Is this her getting feedback on the viability of another campaign for president? Is this just her determined to speak up and help the party and stay involved. Why is Kamala Harris appearing on May 6th at the DNC fundraiser in New York? What's going on with Kamala Harris? Bottom of the deck, Six of Cups. She is, in fact, she's had some time to assess what's happened in the past, how everything went down. And, and this is really beautiful. She's had some time to adjust in her power, in understanding for herself who she has always been. And that what happened with the election, yes, it was crushing. I mean, we saw that. I've done readings on her, others have. You yourselves know, that's something I think intuitively we get. It was crushing, it was soul crushing. But that Six of Cups says she's had enough time to get some perspective and to understand that her voice is still very necessary. We have the Hangman. I think that's still indecision. So for those of us who have been leaning toward, yeah, for sure she's going to go for governor of California. There's so much she can do in that capacity if that's what she chooses to do. And for sure the polls have been saying if she runs, everybody else might as well pack it up and go home that she's in. But the Hangman seems to indicate she really is giving some consideration. Is this May 6th event partially designed to help her make up her mind? Will she be examining how she's received? Five of Swords. So some clarity definitely that she's trying to get around the viability of a 2028 campaign for president. Two of Pentacles comes back, weighing it out, weighing her decision, and needing it from a financial standpoint. Pentacles representing the money. This is a fundraising event on May 6th to see, because gosh knows how expensive that race is going to be in 2028. I think it's going to be historic. The Three of Swords. She has even though she's done all this healing that we saw when we came out in the reading with the Six of Cups, she does not, and why would she, want to set herself up for anything like how things went down before. And she does not want to disappoint the people. Oh, wow. Because she carries that, you all. She felt like she had let us down. She carried that. That's part of her, why she got quiet for a while. Yes, it was very personal, and rightfully so, and that she needed that time. But she's also extremely concerned for the ways that she sees the American people hurting now. She meant that, and she said, not that I told you so, but I told you so. She's very keenly sensitive to that, and she does not want to do anything. Seven of Swords, exactly. There's a clarity that she still needs. And also this Seven of Swords is representing the infighting that's happening within the Democratic Party. That is one reason why, thank you, Spirit. That is one reason why she's decided to do this, you all. The whole notion of the old Democrats need to scooch out of the way and make room for the new ones. We have David Hogg, who many of you probably heard in the last week or so, a young vice chair of the DNC. Remember, this is a DNC event on May 6th. Ken Martin, chair, is going to be with Kamala Harris. But my point with that, Spirit is saying, remember, David Hogg is a part of this younger contingent of leaders within the DNC who are calling for older Democrats to step aside as incumbents and allow new energy to come in. She is keenly aware of that, and she recognizes that she can build a bridge or would like to build a bridge between that, between the old and the new, between established principles within the party, established fundraising, established donors and messaging, all of it. And that Seven of Swords has to do with the messaging. She recognizes the confusion and she feels like she can bring order to some of that confusion. You know, we've got the folks who are not so happy with Chuck Schumer. So you know, and then we've got the Bernie Sanders and AOC out here, you know, the fighting oligarchy. So there are those contesting voices, and that for sure. We have the King of Wands. I think this is going to be, maybe this is Martin or someone else within the party. Notice it says charismatic there. So this is, I'm getting, you all, the more cards that I'm pulling, this and the Two of Cups, bringing the party, unifying the party, finding a message that the party can unify around. So I'm getting in so many words that Spirit is saying this, her decision to do this is not so much about her own political ambition or decisions around whether or not to run either for governor or president in 2028. I think Kamala Harris is doing this really on behalf of the party and on behalf of the people. This is more her leaning, Seven of Pentacles, joining forces to build stability, to coalesce around a message that people can begin to center around, because a part of what we're hearing as well, and Spirit is reminding me, is part of the challenge that of where we are right now is the dissatisfaction and the fighting oligarchy and authoritarianism and fascism. That's crystal clear, and that's not going anywhere. But then in addition to the resistance, what is the messaging of the here's what we're going to do? Here's where we see the needs. Here's the platform, basically. And that's what I'm getting. That Seven of Pentacles feels like she wants to do this. She's agreed to do it. Not so much because it's her way of announcing her candidacy for one thing or another, but because Page of Pentacles, it is the beginning of revamping what the messaging will be so that the Democratic Party can truly unify and get its act together and move forward and get away from that whole toxic manosphere energy, the devil, you know, the fears that people have, the energy of being tied to something that is not desired, is not healthy, is not helping at all. And there's the Ace of Cups comes back. So Spirit's giving me confirmation of that. That's what that devil, you know, and even I look at that imagery in there with, you know, you could see that as the MAGA faithful, you know, just completely attached to something that is so in their own to their own detriment. But you know, that's a different topic for a different day. All right, you all. So I hope that was helpful. Let's keep an eye on what happens on May 6th and what we see. I cannot wait to hear her speech and learn more about what her ideas are. And just because she's been missed, it'll be delightful to see her. And as for the continued protests, yes, being careful out there and being aware. But one way or another, I love that Chariot that we got, because one way or another, this will not stop. And the people are recognizing that there is strength in numbers and the voices need to be heard. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for being here. And you know, when I get ready to go, we got to remember, keep our chin up, our shoulders back, and we got to remember to breathe, you all. It's you know, breath is life, breath is power, breath is how we communicate and how we put things in motion, how we put our bodies in motion. So it's happening and it's a process, but we're going to get through it together. That's why I have this platform, and this platform is nothing without you here on it with me. So again, I thank you so very much. I'll check back in with you in a few days. Bye.